Support for Audacious with Chion Wolf provided by a generous contribution from Suzanne Hopgood in memory of Frank Lord.
From Connecticut Public Radio in Hartford, this is Audacious. I'm Chion Wolf. TV and movies. They rely on the suspension of disbelief to really pull the audience into a story. And it's a lot easier to suspend that disbelief when what we see on the screen seems real. Showrunners can only take an episode so far before they need first-hand experience to make a scene come alive. They need someone who's stood in the middle of a crime scene, someone who's run toward a medical emergency, someone who's looked back at Earth from space. Today, entertainment consultants, people whose real work inspires and informs what we see on the screen and helps actors get it right. A former FBI profiler with Criminal Minds, an ER doctor behind the Emmy-winning drama The Pitt, and a NASA astronaut who helped make the film Space Cadet feel real, both inside and outside the rocket. We'll start with someone who spent decades reading human behavior for a living, then translating the darkest corners of people's minds into stories millions of us can't stop watching. In fact, if you were writing a television series about Jim Clemente, you might think it was too much. He spent more than 20 years as a prosecutor and FBI profiler, and much of his work focused on solving sex crimes. While he was still doing that work, he became a consultant and later a writer and producer on the TV series Criminal Minds. The show features a fictionalized version of the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit at Quantico, featuring Mandy Patinkin. It ran for 15 seasons on CBS, had 2 spin-offs, and rebooted as Criminal Minds Evolution on Paramount Plus in 2022. But let's rewind back to the 80s. Jim was a sex crimes prosecutor in the Bronx when a case came along that was deeply personal and dangerous. It began with a phone call from his brother, an FBI agent at the time, who said,
"Since you're a prosecutor, we should go after the director of the camp that we were at when we were kids." I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, because I snuck into his office once and found 3 paper bags filled with pictures of him molesting boys." I said, "I thought I was the only one." So the next day I went to the FBI NYPD task force on sexual exploitation of children. I told them what had happened to me, and they started a case. They found out that the guy had been teaching and coaching at 13 different Catholic schools over the last 23 years, and that each time there was an allegation, he would just resign, walk down the street to a new school and start all over again. They did an investigation. They couldn't find any current victims, so they asked me to wear a wire. I said, "No way, I can't sit down and have a civil conversation with them." But then one day I walked into the law school I had graduated from about 2 years earlier, and he was sitting behind the desk in the registrar's office, the guy who molested me. And I had just convinced myself that this was never going to happen, and there he was. And so I called up the FBI and said, "Look, I know where he is. Wire me up." And so I ended up meeting with him 6 times and recording the conversations, and we were able to find some current victims and lock them up. And it got even better when, after the case was over, the FBI agent who worked the case handed me an application to the FBI and said, "We want you." And I literally said to him, "Would they take me even though I was a victim?" And he said, "Of course, being a victim of crime doesn't prevent you from becoming an FBI agent, and you did a great job in this case." And a year later, I got out of the FBI Academy and was assigned to the exact same squad that had just finished working my case. And instead of hiding from the people I was working with, they all knew, so it wasn't a secret, and they didn't judge me for it. So it really helped me get back on my feet and use my experience to help others, as opposed to hiding in shame.
First of all, I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Oh, thanks.
And I'm also thinking about how it's sort of a hero's journey in a way that many of us are attracted to understanding. You know, those of us who've either been challenged in our lives and are looking for someone else who has, or someone who maybe feels that they never have and wonders what they would do in that scenario. And that leads me into my next question, which is, when did you find yourself with one foot in law enforcement and another in the entertainment industry. How in the world did that happen?
It's kind of convoluted, but I was actually at home recovering from a bone marrow transplant. I was a first responder on 9/11, and like a lot of cops, firemen, and FBI agents, we all got lymphoma after that. But I got a call from a friend of mine at work who said, "Look, I'm bringing this actor around the unit, and isn't there anybody in the FBI with a personality? So I thought of you, so I'm calling you to see if you can meet with this guy." And I said, "Look, I can meet you, but I'm going to have to wear a surgical mask and gloves," which was very out of the ordinary at the time. So I walked into this place, and Mandy Patinkin walks up to me and says, "Hi, I'm Mandy Patinkin." And I said, "Of course you're Mandy Patinkin. You think I'm stupid?" And he busted out laughing. He sat down and he said, "Tell me your best case and your worst case." And I said, "My worst case is not for entertainment purposes, but I'll tell you my best case." And I told him the story of a 6-year-old boy who was abducted, and somehow I was able to help guide them to where he was, and they found him, and he was alive 28 hours after the abduction, which beat a lot of odds. When I told Mandy Patinkin that, he picked up the phone, he called Mark Gordon, who created the show Criminal Minds, and he said, "I'll do the show, but you got to meet this guy, Jim." They brought me out, and I started telling them my stories, my cases, and they started writing frantically. I didn't realize I was giving away millions of dollars worth of TV, but I said to the showrunner, who was Ed Bonero, who was a former cop from Chicago, and I said, "Look, I'll be happy to do this if you help us do our job," because I'm still an FBI profiler at this time. "If you help us do a job, don't hurt it." And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, look at all the TV and movies. Everything says the FBI comes in and steals cases from the locals, and they're just arrogant. And if you do that, that's going to hurt us doing our job. But if you show us going in and helping locals and then sort of fading away into the background and letting them take the glory, that would help us tremendously." And he said, "Absolutely." So I became a tech advisor on the show while I was still an FBI agent. And then season 2, I wrote my first episode and got into the Writers Guild, and I actually won a Human Rights Award for that episode because it was about stopping the torture in Guantanamo, which is something that I did in the real world. And then after I retired, I came on full time and became a writer-producer on the show. I helped with the spinoff Criminal Minds Suspect Behavior, and then the later spinoff Criminal Minds Beyond Borders. And I tell you, it's been just an amazing ride. What an amazing family we've had. It was a hell of a learning experience for me. So it's a pretty unusual way to get into tech advising and then writing and producing. But man, I would do it over again 1,000 times.
Yeah, and you couldn't have written it.
Well, if I did, nobody would believe it. Yeah.
Exactly, right. Like the best real life stories. When I imagine you being an FBI agent, and when I imagine you writing scripts and consulting and doing your work in the entertainment industry, I imagine you lighting up when you solve a real investigation, and I imagine you lighting up when you get a scene or a story just right. Do those levels of adrenaline line up?
You're absolutely right. In fact, yesterday I was listening to an audio play that I wrote. It dropped in 2024. It's called Bluebeard. It's about the first serial killer in LA in 1920. And his name is James Bluebeard Watson. And I had his confession from 1920. And so I wrote his character very close to real life. In fact, I used a lot of his own words. And because I was a profiler, I was able to understand his behavior and sort of work that into the script as well. But yesterday when I was listening to it, there were scenes that I wrote that I did light up. Some of them because they were based on behavior that I saw in real cases and things that came out of my mind. And both of those things are kind of cool to actually see that produced or hear that produced. And when I wrote the first scene ever for Criminal Minds, it was about child abductions. I talked to you earlier a little bit about that, but we did a study in the behavioral analysis unit on child abductions that ended in murder. And 44% of the kids who were abducted and killed are killed within the first hour, 73% in the first 3 hours, 99% in the first 24 hours. And I had spoken it hundreds of times to law enforcement officers across the country and around the world. And when I wrote it in the scene and I saw the actors act it out, and Dr. Reed, who's our resident genius on the show, he would do this thing called Reed vision, we would call it, and he'd sort of walk into a green screen in the real world, but they have him walking out onto as he's saying these statistics, walking out onto a playground. There's 10 kids playing. And then after he says 44% die in the first hour, half the kids disappear. And then he says 73% in 3 hours, and 3/4 of the kids are gone. And then he says 99% after 24 hours. And there's one girl left swinging on the swing and then disappears. And the swing is swinging empty. And immediately the hair stood up on the back of my neck. And I realized that when it gets through all the syndication and so forth, 160 million people see that. 18 million people saw it that night, but 160 million people saw that around the world. I was like, this is an incredible force multiplier. I can actually teach people the real stuff that we've been trying to get out to law enforcement and people around the world. I can use this vehicle to do that. And that was a real aha moment. That's when I decided, yeah, I really need to make this my next career.
When you imagine the Jim who's wearing a badge every day, and then you imagine the Jim who's at the writer's table every day, which one feels more like you?
Wow. That's interesting, because I wouldn't have been able to do the second, the writer's table, had I not lived the first. I think there was a time in my life when wearing the badge and the gun was absolutely me. But I do think I got to a point in my life where picking up a pen instead and using that vast amount of knowledge that I was fortunate enough to have, it was a much greater way to spread the knowledge that I had. And when I was young, LA Law came on, and because they showed strong female attorneys, 20% more women entered law school during that time. And during the show X-Files, there were 100,000 applications to the FBI every year. And now, with behavioral analysis unit getting light in Criminal Minds, there are forensic psychology programs all the way to the doctor level in almost every big university across the country and some around the world. And TV, even though it's fictional TV, has the ability to teach people and change culture. And I think that's a tremendous opportunity that I was fortunate enough to be able to transition to.
I wonder, is there one particular story that was particularly meaningful to you to take from your experience and turn it into something that everyone could see?
I think the first episode of Criminal Minds that I wrote was called Lessons Learned. And I thought it was really important to speak out in a way that I was legally able to about what had been happening and how destructive it was down in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. We had a detention center there, and the people who were running it had no idea how to accurately and reliable get information from people. They thought that being mean and aggressive and cruel was a way to get people to tell them the truth, and that's just absolutely not true. In fact, they were apparently watching the show 24 to get ideas on how to interrogate detainees. The writers of 24 were horrified when they found that out, because they were thinking they were just doing fiction, but they were creating a reality that was just obscene. And that's the power that TV has. So when I went down there and I found out what they were doing, and I did everything I could to stop it and bring it to light, and eventually it did stop it. I thought it was important to tell the world that in a way, in a meaningful way, without violating any rules or anything, but just telling the truth about building rapport, building a human bridge of kindness and respect and dignity with the people that you're talking to. And that is how you get them to actually tell you the truth and even become cooperators, people who are working with you. And that should be the goal, not trying to punish someone and think that that's going to give you accurate and reliable information.
You must have become a Hafiz by what? Age 10?
9.
Any person with the discipline and dedication to memorize the entire Quran by age 9 must have a very serious reason to choose a life of violence.
Perhaps. We are through already?
No, not at all. The sun is about to set. Mecca's in that direction. I'll have a prayer rug and water bowl sent in.
So because of the higher message that I thought needed to be told, and also because it might just help change the way people address the people that are sitting on the other side of the table from them, I think that was one of the most powerful experiences and difficult experiences in my life.
I'm sorry to get meta on you, but your life would make a great movie or series. So in the event that that is likely to happen, who's going to play you?
I hope Anthony Edwards. I love Anthony Edwards, and he's a great guy.
Let me see what I could do. I know some people.
Okay, thank you.
I have a request. It's a self-serving request.
Okay, you're not going to ask me to sing, I hope.
No.
Okay.
You have been looking at me this whole time, and we've been having this conversation. If you had to profile me, what would be in that report?
Your first impressions are very good. Obviously, you're a professional, so I think you come with a game face on, but you know that you can just be yourself. I think the art on your hands that are visible, it's very intricate, and I think that probably mirrors your personality and how you want to project yourself. Obviously, you do ask questions that aren't reporter-like. They're more like human connection. So I think that probably mirrors how you like to interact with people. You've been very nice to me. And even when there were some glitches when we were setting up, it didn't seem to phase you. So you've probably been through a few things in your life. People who have been through real tribulations and trauma tend to survive better because they're calmer. They say that special ops guys, when the bullets start flying and the bombs start exploding, their heart rate actually goes down because this is what they've trained for. And so I think trauma does the same thing to people. And so when people have been through things, the little things don't freak them out as much. And I also like the fact that you're very connected. So I'd say overall you're a pretty decent person.
Thanks. That means a lot to me. I think you're spot on. Nothing I would argue with.
Good.
There's a future for you in profiling. You know that, right?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
If the screenwriting thing doesn't work out, you know?
I got to try that sometime.
Well, Jim Clementi, thank you so much for talking with me.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Kyle.
When we get back, how one doctor's real-life experiences help shape the stories you see on The Pitt.
I was newly diagnosed with breast cancer, and so I did text Noah and say, we need to have a healthcare provider with breast cancer.
I'm Kyone Wolf. This is Audacious. Stay with me. This is Audacious. I'm Kyone Wolf. Before the break, we heard from former FBI profiler turned TV consultant Jim Clementi about what it means to bring real investigative instincts into a writer's room and what shows like Criminal Minds can teach the public, for better or for worse. And that's what we're talking about today, the power and responsibility of entertainment consultants. Because great showrunners want the details right. Not because the viewers are nitpicky, although, hi, I see you out there, public radio listener, but because the details shape what we believe is normal and probable, what we fear, and what we trust. A little later, we'll talk with NASA astronaut Nicole Stott about consulting on a space comedy, how you balance scientific accuracy with the heart of a story, and why sometimes the most realistic thing in a movie that takes place outside our atmosphere isn't a piece of equipment. It's what happens to a person when they get a totally different perspective of life on Earth. But now, if crime shows teach us what a bad guy looks like, hospital shows teach us what care looks like. Who gets believed, who gets dismissed, and what counts as an emergency. Dr. Sylvia Owosu-Wansa never aspired to be involved with television or film. She was busy enough as an emergency medicine physician, EMS medical director, and educator at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. But something happened during the early days of COVID that changed the trajectory of her life. She became the first Black person and first physician in the state of Pennsylvania to receive the vaccine. Using that moment to speak openly about health disparities and trust in medicine revealed the reach and power of media. It even led her to create a short film inspired by her life in medicine called In Good Hands. So when a colleague called in 2024 about this new HBO medical drama that was looking for real emergency medicine expertise in Pittsburgh, yeah, she was ready. After a long Zoom with the show's executive producer, Sylvia came on as the Pitt's medical consultant. And it's paid off. In 2025, the show won 5 Emmy Awards, including Outstanding Drama Series. But I wanted to know, back when the folks behind the Pitt first brought her in, what were they hoping she'd help them get right?
What pertinent issues have not been yet addressed in medical dramas that you want to see? They specifically asked me about healthcare disparities. And so immediately said sickle cell and pain management. I'm tired of sickle cell patients being seen as pain seekers. Like, we really need to address that. They asked me about the demographics of Pittsburgh and the immigrant population. So I talked about Nepali and Hindi and the Somali population, all the different populations that came in. Talked about my love for CPR and the automated CPR device. I threw in my peds mix in there of the uptick of THC gummy ingestions. And I was like, people need to know that it's not okay to leave your gummies in a bag or on the table, that these kids end up comatose with seizures and in the intensive care unit. And then I explained to them that I am still the only Black female doctor in the pediatric emergency medicine department, but that is not uncommon, unfortunately. And I told them about a scenario where I walked into this room. There was a Black family, and they were like, "It's our queen." And I'm like looking around like, who are you talking to? I don't see a queen. I mean, and then I realized they were talking about me. And I was like, oh, it's not so bad here. So anyway, some of those storylines were shared. And for those who watch The Pitt, you can identify with those. So fast forward April 2024, I got the call that, hey, they got the green light to be a real series. So thanks for your help. May in 2024, I had an opportunity to go out to LA. I'm also an EMS medical director, and I went out there for my EMS job. And I wanted to thank Hollywood Health and Society for giving me the opportunity. So I went to their office in University of Southern California, had lunch, and they said, guess what? It's your lucky day. All the writers are in the writer's room. Come on, we'll take you to the writer's room. So past the big sign that says John Wells Productions, I turn the corner and there's Noah Wiley. Now, you have to understand, he wasn't on the call, the initial call. So I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, now I'm like ER, Dr. Carter, fangirling. And he's like, it's okay, Dr. Sylvia, it's okay. We're here to talk to you. They had me sit at the head of the table in the writer's room, and they're like, show us your movie. So I showed them my In Good Hands movie. They all clapped, and they asked me again if there's anything else that I could add to the storylines. And I said, you know what? You cannot talk about Pittsburgh and healthcare if you do not talk about Freedom House Ambulance. So for those that don't know, EMS was started in the city of Pittsburgh, predominantly Black neighborhood of the Hill District, on the backs of 25 initially Black men and then later on women. The first dispatcher was a 17-year-old African-American woman who got called to do the job and was like, I don't want to do this job, but ended up doing the job and doing it well and became a paramedic. And the Freedom House Ambulance is a fabulous history, and where you have an Austrian Jewish immigrant, now known as the father of CPR, Dr. Peter Safar. You have an Israeli woman as a medical director, right? And this is the late 60s. So very progressive. And you have some of the best paramedics taking care of the most underserved neighborhood. And so most underserved neighborhood is getting the care that they deserve. And so they were giving Narcan in the ambulance in the 1960s, not now. It's not a new thing. They were doing EKGs and sending them over to the hospital. They were placing in IVs. They were putting down breathing tubes and helping people to breathe in the back of an ambulance before pretty much everyone else. And so I said, it's very important that you're aware of this history, important history.
Freedom House took us in and trained us for 300 hours.
They turned out the very first medics in the United States.
We started IVs, defibrillated, intubated in the field.
They were the heroes of Hill District. Bunch of young black dudes saving lives every day.
Why'd you quit?
I didn't.
The city saw how successful it was, took over the program, trained new medics.
All white.
Everything that Willie and his friends did set the EMS standard for the entire country. Their program created the 911 system.
It wasn't just us. We had the best teachers. And Dr. Saffa invented CPR.
What are some other scenes that you see and you think, I know that wouldn't have happened without me?
The woman who had sickle cell pain crisis, it was the exact story. They just changed up the age when they used the Lucas device. The THC gummies, we're seeing so much of it that all the pediatricians and peds ER docs could relate. The other thing I didn't talk about was a moment of silence, which Dr. Marilyn Leno from our department brought over from Milwaukee. Anytime a child passes in our ED, we take a moment of silence. So a lot of that stuff was in the first 2 episodes or even the first episode. So moment of silence, the Nepali lady trying to figure out language equity, and definitely Dr. Collins being the only Black female physician for at least the first shift. And then the My Queen, that was a direct line with Cynthia Darkwa is the writer on that. And she pulled me aside and she's like, can I use that line? I said, sure. So she did. So the whole scenario with the, African-American mom concerned about her son really connecting with Dr. Collins and wanting her to be her personal doctor was my interaction with that family that called me the queen. Even there was a line where Dr. Langdon was talking about scurvy. So I'd shared with them a kid who only ate like chicken nuggets and fries and came in with bruises, and it ended up being vitamin C deficiency, otherwise known as scurvy. So even they threw little taglines and things in there that I was like, wow, this is insane. Like, not only did they take the advice, they really took heart to the storylines. And then, of course, Freedom House. So those are just some of the things.
The Pitt earned 13 Emmy nominations, took home 5 awards, including Outstanding Drama Series. Congratulations. That's all on you.
Oh, not all on me, but definitely. I clarify that I didn't write anything, but I did share a storyline. But yes, I share in that celebration with them. And in celebration, it was just so worked out that literally the day after the Emmys, the Pitt crew came to Pittsburgh to film exteriors. And so I invited Noah and the gang to come to our children's hospital, and we gave them a red carpet ceremony. So we had that opportunity to celebrate with them post-Emmy, which was really cool.
I bet it was probably even better than the Emmys. I can't speak for him, but I'm guessing it was probably even more fulfilling.
Yeah, for him and Patrick, I think they were, and they had fun at the children's hospital, and the Steelers happened to be there. So it couldn't be any better, right? So
Come on, Steelers.
Steelers happened to be there, right? So they took pictures with the Steelers. They took pictures with the medevac group. They got to see it all. They had their own little Hollywood in Pittsburgh. And we got Permanente sandwiches for them to top it off. Permanente sandwiches are quintessential Pittsburgh cuisine. So they got a taste of that, literally.
Now that you are so deep into this, not only your own work, but working with the Pitt, do you find that your own radar for future stories is sort of always on now as you do your work?
Oh, my storyline, yes, it's always on. Everybody's like, you need to write. So I was newly diagnosed with breast cancer. And so I did text Noah and say, we need to have a healthcare provider with breast cancer, and we're dealing with that. So talk about storylines.
And I appreciate you being able to be open about your recent breast cancer diagnosis. It makes me think about how, your specialty is not oncology, but you know what it feels like to be a doctor. You know what it feels like to give difficult news, to cope with difficult diagnoses, difficult treatments. ongoing treatments and surprise ones. And now you are on the other side of the chart. And I wonder, even at this early stage, as you've been learning about this diagnosis and planning on what to do next, how so far your experience as a patient is beginning to inform your work as a doctor.
It's a little bit frustrating. For breast cancer, it's individualized care. So it can be a watch and wait, and it can be a little bit nerve wracking where it's like, I know I have cancer. So like, what are we doing? Kind of situation. And so, yeah, it's been a month of, we need a breast MRI. And then, oh, the breast MRI showed this, but no, just kidding. Now that we re-reviewed it, it showed this. So we need more data. So we need to go back in with a biopsy. And oh, by the way, we did full body scans of which don't have any spread of the cancer to my bones, my liver, my lungs, most of the things. But they found this random nodule in my pelvis that now we got to go chasing after. So we'll go to get an ultrasound tomorrow. And so the watch and wait game could be very frustrating. And I'm a doctor, like I'm in the system, and I have people advocating for me and vouching for me that like an ultrasound or MRI that would normally be scheduled 6 months out, I'm getting next week because I'm in the system. But in the back of my mind, I think about folks like my mother and my aunt, think about lay people that don't have these resources. What I will say that's great about breast cancer is that there's been so much research done, which is why research is important. It's so important. It is so advanced that women are living, they are surviving, they are in remission. The cancer is not coming back. There are more women living post breast cancer than ever. Almost 1 in 4 to 1 in 5 women are diagnosed with breast cancer. That's a lot of aunties, grandmas, moms, sisters out there. And so it's good to know that the therapies have advanced, but navigating the healthcare system the way it is today with a lack of resources, meaning human resources, there are less people to do the work, makes it hard. You have to advocate for yourself. You need to be very adamant about your screening. So I got diagnosed through annual mammogram. I didn't even notice the changes, though there were changes, physical changes. I didn't notice it. So, and I have to say I am that stubborn doctor that I didn't get mammograms for a few years because I was quote unquote too busy.
When you bring up your breast cancer, everybody who goes through this or any sort of scary medical thing, it's pretty insular. It stays their own story. They don't necessarily write a memoir about it or a song about it or a film about it. And here you've got these connections so that your experience, not just in the hospital with other people, but with yourself, has or may really have an outlet to help other people.
Yeah, it's incredible. Just some of my family members thought I was crazy to blast on social media. And there are a lot of private people out there, but it is amazing. There were people that were quote unquote sick or had health conditions that I didn't know, that after I announced, they were like, oh, what I had was breast cancer. I have former medical school colleagues, residents saying, oh, I had the same thing 2, 3, 4 years ago, and I'm doing fine now, or I'm dealing with stage 4 still, or I got this, wow. It's like, talk about, I am not alone. And there's so many strong women out there and survivors, and even the ones who passed on or still need to be honored and lifted and raised, and their stories should be told, whether that be collectively or individually. It has been powerful. And I think as a doctor, I am in a unique position to educate. Knowledge is power. Getting rid of misinformation is key. And who better than a physician who's dealing with it to speak about it? But I would argue that anybody that's dealing with cancer or any other disease processes are experts in their own right. But I get each their own as far as how vulnerable they want to be, how open they want to be. And I celebrate that and support that too.
Well, Dr. Sylvia Owusu-Wansah, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
After the break, NASA astronaut Nicole Stott opens up about the people inside the spacesuits and how that helped shape the Space Cadet movie.
There is so much that doesn't get out there, I don't think, about the humans doing human spaceflight. The blinders are on, thinking astronauts are their technical people, they're sciencey, that's all they do. They don't, but man, there is a lot of personality in all of the crews, all the people that I worked with.
I'm Kyone Wolf. This is Audacious. Stay tuned.
The stars look very different today. For here am I sitting in
This is Audacious. I'm Chion Wolf. If you've ever watched a space movie and felt your chest tighten, first in awe of the technology, and then because suddenly it's not about rockets anymore, it's about homesickness, friendship, bravery, your family, and the planet itself. Well, that's the lane our next guest loves to live in. Nicole Stott is a NASA astronaut with 2 space flights and more than 100 days in space. She's also a pilot, an engineer, an artist, and someone who helps filmmakers remember that space is about people, not just machines. She worked with the filmmakers behind Space Cadet on Amazon, helping them get the feeling of space right. Not just the mechanics or the jargon, but the awe, the isolation, and the strange intimacy of being off the planet, while still letting the story have exactly the kind of fun it was after. The film, starring Emma Roberts, follows an underestimated woman who's dreamed of space ever since she was a kid, encouraged every step of the way by her mom. She ends up surprising everyone, including herself, and gets into astronaut training. Think Legally Blonde meets the space race.
Well, Mom, I'm actually here. Johnson Space Center. It's so rad. There are rockets and scientists everywhere. The astronauts are hot, by the way. One in particular. Wish I could get your take on him. Let me just say British and glasses. Anyway, I'm already convinced that I am gonna freaking love it here. Space, here we come.
I asked Nicole if her younger self could see her now. What would she think?
I don't know if she would be surprised that she had done these things, but she'd be surprised that she did these things, if you know what I mean. But when I started working out of college as an engineer for NASA at the Kennedy Space Center on the Space Shuttle program, they were just getting back up and running after the Challenger accident. And it was during my time there, moving around from the different places, getting space shuttles ready to fly, that I kind of shifted from this idea of astronaut, oh, that's something only other special people get to do, to, maybe I could consider this. And it took me a while. I mean, I worked at KSC for about 10 years, and it was probably 8, 9 into those 10 years that I started, this astronaut thing, maybe I could consider that, because I started to see what astronauts do, which sadly to astronauts, 99.9% of the time is not flying in space. It's here on Earth. But all that stuff they were doing on Earth was a lot of it I was already doing as a NASA engineer. I just spoke to a couple of people I considered to be mentors, and they didn't push me either way. They didn't discourage me with, thousands of people apply for this, Nicole, it's the long shot, but, go for it if you want to. And they didn't go the other way. They're, you'll make the greatest astronaut, there ever was. I'd like to think they believe that now, but they really just handed me the pen. Here's what you have to do. Here's the one thing you have control of in this whole process. They told me they love me and they appreciate the work, all of that I do. They confirmed that I have the basic requirements, and they just handed me the pen. And I am so grateful for that. I don't think I would have done it on my own. I would have continued believing that it was just for other special people.
How in the world did you go from lady who went in space and a bunch of other stuff that we'll get to being an entertainment consultant for this movie? How did that happen?
I don't know. Honestly, I think within the entertainment industry, there's some little network out there that they usually try to reach out to NASA directly, to the communications office, and then they parse it out to whoever they like or want, think would be good for the consultation role. And, I've just been lucky a couple times to get tied into something that was fun. And I really think this was a fun film.
What did you get a sense that the filmmakers were really trying to get right by consulting with you?
Well, I think they wanted to get a sense of what it was like to be in space. I think for the most part, though, it was more about, and it's what I liked about the movie too. You can pick this movie apart all you want when it comes to the technical, scientific kind of, even to how this young woman even gets introduced or brought into NASA. And believe me, I tried to pick some about apart in the script, and then I just chilled because I was like, you know what? This story is more about the relationships. It's more about lifting each other up. It's more about how we can, find ourselves, when we might have been a little bit misdirected along the way or lost our way somehow. And a friendship and support and all of these things that really are why I decided to take the role as a consultant, to continue speaking to them. But I'll tell you, it took me a little bit of, well, we don't do that with a robotic arm. You would have to be tethered and you're not going to jump off the side of the space, or you're not going to, how could you ever get into the Space Center with little mini shorts on? All this kind of stuff. I had to get over that, right? And once I did, the joy of it really opened up. And I am so happy that I was happy after I watched the film. I think it's really, really fun and uplifting. And I think it speaks also to the way we try to interact as real crewmates on real missions. There is so much that doesn't get out there, I don't think, about the humans doing human spaceflight. The blinders are on, thinking astronauts are their technical people, they're sciencey, that's all they do. They don't, but man, there is a lot of personality in all of the crews, all the people that I worked with in the astronaut office and the mission control teams across the board. And I was really happy to see it in some sarcastic way sometimes come through in this film too.
When I was watching this film, it's so lighthearted. It's so sweet and goofy, and yet there was this moment, I won't ruin it for anybody, but there's a moment when the main character is floating tethered over the planet and she's feeling emotional and she's remembering her mom who always supported her dream to be an astronaut someday. And she says,
"We did it, Mom."
And I was surprised as I'm watching this, I'm tearing up. I'm feeling emotional too, and I couldn't help but think of you. And, you had really supportive parents. And there you were at some point in your career looking over this planet. I would love to hear, what was that moment like for you? Because I'm imagining you sure had it.
Absolutely. And I think I had it a lot. Every time I floated by that window, it was like, holy moly. You were surprised by something new and beautiful and, this reality check of who and where we all are in space together. And you can't help but think about the people that you love, and be like, oh, I'm looking down on you, oh, I can see my house from here. Silly stuff like that even too of, holy moly, this is pretty intense to be separated from it that way and be able to witness it like that and consider the wholeness of it really. And, of course, I'm thinking about my son, but I'm thinking about, this is a planet, right? How often every day I do now. And it's one of the things I like to encourage people to do is I'd like you to wake up every morning, have your feet hit the floor and remind yourself that you are standing on a planet in space and how powerful that is.
And the best planet anywhere we've seen.
Anywhere. And it is stunning. And in all the ways that you imagine it to be. And one of the things that really stuck out to me was, and most astronauts speak of it, is this glow of the atmosphere, this veil thin blue line that wraps around the Earth. And holy moly, that is the only border that matters. Whether you can see other ones or not from space does not matter. And it, just like the metal hull of my spaceship, that thin blue line is all that is protecting everyone I love down there and people I don't know and maybe don't love, I don't know, from the deadly vacuum of space, just like the metal hull of my spaceship. And in all that, I just kept feeling this connection. It's I am the farthest I have been yet from the planet. And I say yet because I'm always hopeful love to go to the moon someday. And I'm feeling more connected to it and to everyone than I might have even with my feet on it. And so I try to remind myself of that all the time because I think that view, and I would hope that even, in that film I imagine expanding on those thoughts that she was having. It's this reality check and being able to compare with what she had just done, save the day, all of that, how they had to work together to make that happen, how she got to live in this metal can to get there and do it and survive in that place. It's every day, that's what we're doing as a crew on the International Space Station. We wake up on the morning in this machine that we built to sustain our life, and we know that one of the very first things we have to do every morning is check how much carbon dioxide is in our atmosphere, how much clean drinking water we have, the integrity of that thin metal hull, and the health and well-being of all our crewmates before we ever even go off and do the first experiment or spacewalk or whatever is planned for that day, because we know we have to do that to survive in that place. And it's such an amazing example for the way we should be behaving down here on our planetary spaceship. And that's why I love films like this too. I mean, I think it gets people thinking about space. You know, even if it's goofy or silly, it kind of transports them in a way that has them imagining, you know, maybe themselves there, or if they'd be afraid of that, or, you know, what they're seeing in that film they could bring back to Earth. And then hopefully they want to learn more about what's going on in space, which ultimately is all about improving life on Earth.
You have seen our planet from a perspective that most of us never will, unless that's part of the dying process. That would be kind of cool. But I wonder, because you've had this perspective, what you wish everyone here on Earth could understand about being here.
Well, I mean, you said it earlier too about how like special this place is, that it's the best planet. The deal is you don't have to lift off of it to understand that, right? I feel blessed to have flown in space, to have had that perspective looking back at Earth that way, to have been in awe of it. I want people to understand what I experienced, or at least try to share that in a way that they can make a connection to, and maybe know that what we're doing in space is valuable, that it is about improving life on Earth. But I really, really want people to remember the simple things that came from it for me. The fact that we live on a planet and that we're all Earthlings. And the only border that matters is that thin blue line of atmosphere. And just like the interaction in this film, you know, the crewmates and how they support each other, I think it's really important for us to accept our role as crewmates and not passengers on our planetary spaceship. I mean, I really, really feel like I saw it happen on a machine in space, you know? And I think we really have the power then to create a future for all life on Earth that's as beautiful as it looks from space. You don't have to go to space to understand the awe and wonder of where we are on this. I mean, I'm looking out my backyard and it is torn up from a hurricane a year ago. But when you look past that, I mean, it is awesome. I don't care if it's just a little flower in the grass or the light in the sky or whatever. There is awe and wonder surrounding us every day. And just like through the window of that spaceship, I mean, I could have put the shade down. But I think we have to open our hearts and our minds to the awe and wonder that surrounds us wherever we are. And that can be difficult when there's a lot of the CRAP going on, you know, around us too, excuse my language. But it is there. I mean, we can find it in the people we love and the places we are. And then we just have to suck that in and bring it into our lives in a crewmate kind of way.
Well, crewmate Nicole Stott, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thanks for including me.
Audacious is always lovingly produced by Jessica Severin DeMartinez, Meg Fitzgerald, and Robin Doyon Aitken at Connecticut Public Radio in Hartford. If you like this episode, we have a bunch of conversations that revolve around how movie magic is made, like the one we did featuring an intimacy coordinator, and how she makes sure actors in delicate scenes are kept safe. Find us at ctpublic.org/audacious or wherever you get your podcasts. Stay in touch with me on the socials at Kyone Wolf, and you can always send an email to audacious@ctpublic.org. Peace.